All right, good morning, 6A, 6B, and 6G. Happy May 1st. We're into May already, which is wonderful. We're going to be doing chapters 12 and 13 of our book, Because of Winn, Dixie. In the background, I have a trail marker saying we're past halfway there. So we're going to be past halfway of this book today, at chapters 12 and 13. I'm just going to show you our various settings that we're going to be going over today. Here's the map of Naomi. We're going to be doing chapters 12, which is primarily in Otis's pet store, and chapter 13, which is primarily in Gloria Dump's backyard. So those are the two settings that the two chapters are about. And we're going to start off with reading in Otis's pet store. And of course, there's Otis and the guitar with all the animals around. And then we have Winn Dixie. And then we have Opal there as well. So I'm just going to share the screen with you and get my read aloud book out here for chapters 12. And then we're going to start reading right away. All right, chapter 12. Me and Winn Dixie got to Gertrude's pet so early for my first day of work that the close sign was still in the window. But when I pushed the door, it swung open. And so we went on inside. I was about to call out to Otis that we were there, but then I heard music. It was the prettiest music I have ever heard in my life. I looked around to see where it was coming from. And that's when I noticed that all the animals were out of their cages. There were rabbits and hamsters and gerbils and mice and birds and lizards and snakes. And they were all just sitting there on the floor like they had turned to stone. And Otis was standing in the middle of them. He was playing guitar and he had on skinny, pointy-toed cowboy boots, and he was tapping them while he was playing the music. His eyes were closed and he was smiling. Winn Dixie got a dreamy kind of look on his face. He smiled really hard at Otis, and then he sneezed, and then his whiskers went all fuzzy. And then he sighed and kind of drooped to the floor with all the other animals. Just then, Gertrude caught sight of Winn Dixie. "Dog!" she croaked, and flew over and landed on his head. Otis looked up at me. He stopped playing his guitar, and the spell was broken. The rabbits started hopping, and the birds started flying, and the lizards started leaping, and the snakes started slithering. Look at those three S's. Does anyone know what that is? There's an S there, an S there, an S there. It's a figurative language. It starts with the letter A. It's called alliteration. And when Dixie started barking and chasing everything that was moving, and Otis shouted, "Help me!" For what seemed like a long time, me and Otis ran around trying to catch mice and gerbils and hamsters and snakes and lizards. We kept bumping into each other and tripping over animals, and Gertrude kept screaming, "Dog, dog!" Every time I caught something, I put it back in the first cage I saw. I didn't care if it was the right cage or not. I just put it in and slammed the door. And the whole time I was chasing things, I was thinking that Otis must be some kind of snake charmer. The way he could play his guitar and make all the animals turn to stone. And then I thought, "This is silly," I shouted over Winn Dixie barking at Gertrude, yelling. I said, "Play some more music, Otis." He looked at me for a minute, then he started playing his guitar. In just a few seconds, everything was quiet. Winn Dixie was lying on the floor, blinking his eyes and smiling to himself and sneezing every now and then. And the mice and the gerbils and the rabbits and the lizards and the snakes that we hadn't caught yet got quiet and sat still. And I picked them up one by one and put them back in their cages. When I was all done, Otis stopped playing. He looked down at his boots. I was just playing them some music and make them happy." "Yes, sir," I said. "Did they escape from the cages?" "No," Otis said. "I take them out. I feel sorry for them being locked up all the time. I know what it's like being locked up." "You do?" I said. "I've been to jail," Otis said. He looked up at me real quick and then looked back down on his boots. "You have?" I asked, or said. "Never mind," said Otis. "Aren't you here to sweep the floor?" "Yes, sir," I told him. He walked over to the counter and started digging through a pile of things and finally came up with a broom. "Here," he said, "you should start sweeping," only he must have been confused. He was holding out his guitar to me instead of the broom. "With your guitar?" I asked. He blushed and handed me the broom, and I started to work. I'm a good sweeper. I swept the whole store and then dusted some of the shelves. The whole time I worked, Winn Dixie followed me, and Gertrude followed him, flying behind him and sitting on his head and his back and croaking real quiet to herself, "Dog, dog." When I was done, Otis thanked me. I left Gertrude's pets thinking about how the preacher probably wouldn't like it very much that I was working for a criminal. Sweetie Pie Thomas was waiting for me out front. "I seen that," she said. She stood there and sucked on her knuckle and stared at me. "Seen what?" I said. "I seen all the animals out of their cages and keep 'em real still. Is that man magic?" she asked. "Kind of," I told her. She hugged Winn Dixie around the neck. "Just like this grocery store dog, right?" Right, I said. I started walking, and Sweetie Pie took her knuckle out of her mouth and put her hand in mine. Are you coming to my birthday party? She asked. I surely am. The theme is pink, she said. I know it, I told her. I gotta go, she said. All of a sudden, I gotta go home and tell my mom about what I seen. I live right down there in that yellow house. That's my mama on the porch. You see her? She's waving at you. I waved at the woman on the porch and she waved back, and I watched Sweetie Pie run off to tell her mama about Otis being a magic man. It made me think about my mama and how I wanted to tell her the story about Otis charming all the animals. I was collecting stories for her. I would also tell her about Miss Franny and the bear and about meeting Gloria Dump and believing for just a minute that she was a witch. I had a feeling that these were the kind of stories my mama would like, the kind that would make her laugh out loud, the way the preacher said she liked to laugh. Chapter 13. Me and Winn Dixie got into a daily routine where we would leave the trailer early in the morning and get down to Gertrude's Pets in time to hear Otis play his guitar music for the animals. Sometimes Sweetie Pie snuck in for the concert too. She sat on the floor and wrapped her arms around Winn Dixie and rocked him back and forth like he was a big old teddy bear. They're comparing Winn Dixie to a teddy bear. Does anyone know what that's called? Using the word like or as? If you said a simile, you are correct. Good job. And then when the music was over, she would walk around trying to pick out which pet she wanted, but she always gave up and went home because the only thing she really wanted was a dog like Winn Dixie. After she was gone, I would sweep and clean up and even arrange some of Otis's shelves because he did not have an eye for arranging things, and I did. And when I was done, Otis would write down my time in a notebook that he had marked on the outside. One red leather collar, one red leather leash. And the whole time he did not in any way ever act like a criminal. After working at Gertrude's Pets, me and Winn Dixie would go over to the Herman W. Block Memorial Library and talk to Miss Franny Block and listen to her tell us a story. But my favorite place to be that summer was in Gloria Dump's yard. And I figured it was Winn Dixie's favorite place to be too, because when we got up to the last block before her house, Winn Dixie would break away from my bike and start to run for all she was worth, headed for all he was worth, headed for Gloria Dump's backyard and a spoonful of peanut butter. Sometimes Dunlop and Stevie Dewberry would follow me. They would holler, "There goes the preacher's daughter visiting the witch." She's not a witch, I told them. It made me mad the way they wouldn't listen to me, and I kept on believing whatever they wanted to believe about Gloria Dump. One time Stevie said to me, "My mama says you shouldn't be spending all your time cooped up in that pet shop, in that library, sitting around talking with old ladies. She says, you should get out in the fresh air and play with kids your own age. That's what my mama says." "Oh, lay off her," Dunlop said to Stevie. Then he turned to me. "He don't mean it," he said. But I was already mad, and I shouted at Steve, "I don't care about what your mama says. She's not my mama, so she can't tell me what to do." "I'm going to tell my mama you said that," shouted Stevie. "And she'll tell your daddy, and he'll shame you in front of the whole church, and that pet shop man is slow, and he was in jail, and I wonder if your daddy knows that." "Otis is not slow," I said, "and my daddy knows that he was in jail." That was a lie, but I didn't care. "And you can go ahead and tell on me if you want, you big bald-headed baby." Again, literary device there with the B, and B. Does anyone know what that's called? When you repeat a consonant blend? Alliteration, really good. I swear it about wore me out yelling at Dunlop and Stevie Dewberry every day. But by the time I got to Gloria Dump's yard, I felt like a soldier who had been fighting a hard battle. Gloria would make me a peanut butter sandwich straight off, and then she would pour me a cup of coffee with half coffee and half milk, and that would refresh me. This author, interesting, loves to use semicolons. And again, in this context, the semicolon joins two sentences that could be apart, but they're together because by putting them together, it makes sense. The two sentences make sense together. That's when you use the semicolon. Underutilized piece of writing device that's used. "Why don't you play with them boys?" Gloria asked me. "Because they're ignorant," I told her. "They still think you're a witch. It doesn't matter how many times I tell them you're not." That word ignorant, it's not necessarily a bad word if someone calls you ignorant. It does have negative connotations attached to it, or it has a pejorative kind of feeling to it, but ignorant just means lack of knowledge. It just means you don't know something about a particular subject. I think that they are just trying to make friends with you in a roundabout way, Gloria said. I don't want to be their friend, I said. It might be fun having them two boys for friends. I'd rather talk with you, I said. They're stupid and mean, and they're boys. Gloria would shake her head and sigh, and then she would ask me what was going on in the world, and I did have stories to tell her, and I always did. All right, so that brings an end to chapters 12 and 13. So a couple of reflections as we talk about what went on in the chapters. So number one, the settings, when we went over them, those are Otis's, the pet store, and Gloria Dump's backyard. That's easy. Some of the characters we have, what's it, Dewberry, I think his name is, and Stevie. And those are boys in Opal's peer group who probably want to be her friend, but she's kind of shutting them out for some reason, whatever reason. She thinks they're immature because she calls her friend Gloria Dump a witch, so that's one reason for her not to be friends with them. And again, the plot thickens a little bit. We get to see the events where, we get to see a little bit of Otis's life and the actions that he does, playing guitar, and we can see Opal going about her day-to-day life in the summertime, going over to Gloria Dump's, Fanny Block's library, back and forth and back and forth. But she really likes to spend time here in Gloria Dump's. In terms of character development, Opal is bonding with Gloria Dump a lot more, and the other adults that are in the fictitious town of Naomi. And we're beginning to see Gloria Dump's character a little bit more, and we can start to see what she's like and start to see what Otis is like. So that character development really comes out in chapters 12 and 13, which brings us to a discussion question for this session. So the discussion question is, what role do you think Gloria Dump plays in Opal's life? Discuss using examples or your own ideas from the text. So again, what role does she play in Opal's life? Why is she there? And how is she important to Opal? So what role does Gloria Dump play in Opal's life? Explain using your own ideas and examples from the text, okay? And that brings a ending to chapters 12 and 13. Now, this is represents our midpoint checkup, and I do want to mark your discussion questions if you have them all done. If you're not fully done, that's okay, and you start off late, then just hand in those discussion questions. You're not going to be docked for those marks at all, so don't worry about it. And don't panic that you didn't send it on Friday and just relax. Send it when you can, okay? For those of you, if you look on the activity feed, I will show you a video on how to submit your Google Docs. Most of you have those 4 discussion questions. I also added an attachment with a Google Doc that shows the 4 discussion questions. For those of you who are interested, you may have not have gotten one in the previous session. They're there in the activity feed, okay? So I will go over directions on how for you to, the easiest way to submit your Google Docs to me. And again, happy May 1st. We're over halfway done this book, which is awesome. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, have fun, and have a wonderful weekend, guys. All right.